The soldiers climb. They stop. They look up and realize the ridge they just reached is only the first. Above it, another slope rises, and beyond that, another bend in the path disappears into trees and rock. The formation stretches thin as the trail narrows. Legs burn. Breath shortens. Armor creaks and plates knock together with every step. Behind them, the valley floor looks impossibly distant now. Ahead, stone bases emerge from the mountainside, angled and irregular, almost indistinguishable from the earth itself. There is no single wall to charge, no dramatic gate to smash in one decisive moment. Just more climbing, more turns, more carefully prepared ground where defenders are waiting. Unseen. The castle doesn't rush to defeat them. It doesn't need to. It only needs to make them tired. And it has all the time in the world, when time becomes a weapon. But how did medieval Japanese builders turn entire landscapes into defensive weapons? How did they design castles that fought with exhaustion, confusion, and patience rather than brute force? Welcome to Japan Rewind, where we explore the real stories behind Japan's most fascinating history. Today we're looking at something Hollywood almost always gets wrong about samurai warfare. When we imagine castle sieges, we picture towering walls, climactic charges, and heroic last stands decided in a single afternoon. That wasn't how most Japanese castles worked. These weren't just fortified buildings. They were carefully engineered systems, designed to stretch time, drain morale, and turn geography itself into an ally. Their purpose wasn't to absorb endless punishment. It was to make attacking so slow, so costly, and so uncertain that the enemy would collapse under pressures that had nothing to do with walls falling. This is the story of how medieval Japanese castles weaponized patience. The philosophy of delay. Across medieval Japan, warfare was fluid and unpredictable. Alliances shifted. Seasons mattered. Roads turned to mud. Supplies vanished faster than expected. A campaign that dragged on too long could unravel an entire political position. Japanese castles were built with this reality in mind. They weren't meant to be indestructible. They were meant to delay, to frustrate, to buy time while the world outside the walls changed. A castle that could hold out for weeks or months might never need to face a final assault at all. Relief forces could arrive. Alliances could fracture. An attacking army might be forced to withdraw simply because continuing no longer made sense. So rather than building fortifications that relied on sheer thickness, Japanese engineers focused on momentum. They designed approaches that slowed attackers down, split their forces apart, and turned every meter of progress into a problem that had to be solved. Time became the most important defensive resource, and castles were built to manufacture it. Turning mountains into fortresses. That philosophy reached its purest form in Japan's mountain castles, known as Yamajiro. These fortresses didn't just sit on high ground. They absorbed it. Entire ridgelines were carved into defensive systems, with baileys stepping upward like giant stone and earth staircases. Trenches, known as horikiri, were cut straight across mountain spurs, severing natural access routes and forcing attackers into narrow, predictable approaches. Artificial slopes, called kirigishi, were shaped so steeply that ladders couldn't grip and footing became unreliable. Every ascent cost strength. Every pause exposed attackers to fire from above. Reaching one defensive terrace never meant reaching the castle. It only revealed the next climb, and the next one after that. The genius wasn't in any single wall or tower. It was in transforming the mountain itself into a weapon, one that never tired, never panicked, and never needed resupply. The maze effect. And once attackers finally reached the main complex, the struggle only deepened. Japanese castles were divided into multiple kurua, or baileys, each designed to function as its own defensible zone. Losing an outer area didn't mean collapse. It often meant the fight was about to become more dangerous. Paths curved and doubled back. Gates opened onto spaces that offered no protection. What looked like progress toward the heart of the castle could lead instead into exposed courtyards overlooked from three sides. Commanders lost control. Units became separated. Messages slowed or never arrived. Formations that had survived the climb unraveled inside a maze designed to confuse anyone who didn't already know it by heart. The castle wasn't just blocking the enemy. It was actively disorganizing them, turning their advance into a liability. Slopes, moats, and earthworks. Early Japanese castles relied heavily on dorui, massive earthen ramparts that absorbed impacts and could be repaired quickly. Later, many of these were faced with stone bases known as ishigaki, especially during the Sengoku period. These stone walls weren't vertical barriers waiting to be climbed. They were steeply angled, shedding ladders and forcing attackers to fight gravity itself. The carefully fitted stone faces drained water, resisted erosion, and flexed better during earthquakes than rigid masonry. Moats added another layer of resistance. Some were filled with water. Others were dry, deep, and deliberately difficult to cross under fire. In mountain castles, vertical moats were carved straight down slopes to block lateral movement entirely. At certain sites, grids of trenches and embankments turned hillsides into obstacle courses, landscapes engineered to exhaust before they killed. The message was unmistakable. Every step forward would be paid for in effort. Gates as killing grounds. If there was one place where Japanese castle design became openly lethal, it was the gate. A gate was never just an entrance, it was a trap. Masugata gate complexes forced attackers through a first gate into a boxed courtyard, where they had to turn sharply to reach the second. In that confined space, momentum vanished. Defenders above could fire missiles, drop projectiles, and attack from angles the attackers couldn't easily respond to. Long corridors between walls became channels for enfilade fire. Narrow entrances forced columns into single file. Right angle turns broke charges and shattered coordination. Even when an outer gate fell, the space just beyond it was often designed to expose, not shelter. Breaking in didn't mean safety. It meant stepping into a place where every advantage belonged to the defenders. The gate wasn't meant to keep enemies out forever. It was meant to punish them for coming in at all. Fire, water, and engineering warfare. Japanese castles faced constant threats from fire and water, dangers shaped by climate, construction, and terrain. Wooden superstructures made arson a serious risk. Fire arrows, night attacks, and infiltration could devastate a stronghold if flames spread unchecked. Castles relied on vigilance and rapid response as much as walls. Water, however, could be weaponized. Some castles were deliberately positioned near rivers, wetlands, or low-lying ground. In certain sieges, attackers turned hydrology itself into a tool, building levees, diverting rivers, and flooding entire complexes. At places like Takamatsu and Oshi, water sieges transformed castles into islands, isolating defenders without the need for direct assault. Geography became fluid. Solid ground disappeared. What once protected a castle could suddenly imprison it. Time, starvation, and morale. Yet the most powerful weapon in any siege wasn't fire or water. It was hunger. The siege of Tottori Castle made this brutally clear. Rather than storming the defenses, Toyotomi Hideyoshi cut supply lines and secured regional rice stores. Forts encircled the castle. Time did the rest. Inside, food became more valuable than weapons. Morale collapsed long before the walls did. Starvation turned resistance into calculation, and calculation into surrender. This was the logic behind Japanese castle defense. Walls and slopes weren't meant to hold forever. They were meant to hold long enough for external pressures, hunger, disease, politics, winter to decide the outcome. The castle didn't need to win. It only needed to refuse defeat until the enemy defeated themselves. Famous castles, real outcomes. Gasantoda Castle became legendary for resisting a major siege for more than a year, its ridgeline defenses frustrating repeated attempts at direct assault. But in the end, like so many strongholds, it fell not to force, but to shifting loyalties and political reality. At Odawara in 1590, the late Hojo faced Toyotomi Hideyoshi's massive coalition. Instead of storming the defenses, Hideyoshi encircled the region and built his own fortified camps. He even revealed a newly constructed castle on a nearby hill, a psychological display of overwhelming resources. The message was clear. Time favored the attacker now. Even Osaka Castle, the most formidable fortress Japan had ever seen, endured one campaign only to fall in the next, not because its walls suddenly failed, but because isolation and logistics made continued resistance impossible. Again and again, castles that appeared impregnable fell when the reasons to keep fighting disappeared. What movies get wrong? Films show samurai charging walls in climactic final assaults. Battles decided in a single afternoon. Heroes scaling ramparts under a rain of arrows. Reality was quieter and far more strategic. Most sieges were decided by logistics, engineering, and patience. By people calculating food supplies, building roads, negotiating alliances, and waiting. The storming of inner compounds was rare precisely because it was so costly. Why lose hundreds of men taking a wall? When time was already doing the work for you, Japanese castle warfare wasn't about dramatic last stands. It was about pressure applied slowly, until something finally gave way. The real weapon. In the end, the most sophisticated defense system medieval Japan ever produced wasn't made of stone, wood, or earth. It was made of time. Every switchback path, every angled gate, every confusing bailey was designed to stretch a siege just a little longer, to consume one more sack of rice, to introduce one more doubt into the enemy camp. The castle that refuses to be reached doesn't rely on strength alone. It relies on patience, on the understanding that in medieval warfare, the side that could wait longest usually won. These weren't just buildings. They were machines for manufacturing delay, and in that delay they found their victory. If you value history as it actually unfolded, not the movie version, subscribe to Japan Rewind. Leave a comment with the castle, siege, or period you want us to break down next. And if you want to catch future episodes as they release, ring the bell. We'll keep pulling apart Japan's past, layer by layer,